And this is something that absolutely has fascinated me ever since the first time I saw it. And we can classify this as woodworking because Larry makes all the chips. Okay, ready?
I'm ready.
Go for it.
And as you know, a lot of people know the story. Larry was doing inside the pot and all these pieces started falling on the floor. I came out to see his work and I saw the pieces on the floor and said, don't you get rid of those because I have something in mind. And the first time I did it, I started with these floral wires and tape. And I put it through and I started building the flower around that. But I made my own floral with using the tape around my fingertip actually. And that's what I used to build the flower around. And then I decided wood should be wood. And I did not like the wire and the floral tape. And so I got my head in gear. I found some skewers. I'm going to say it wrong. I knew it. But I found them because the bamboo ones, I did find them in wood. The bamboo ones are too flexible to keep it straight if you're going to do Christmas ornaments with the finials. And I'm going to give you a quick lesson on that. And that's what this one is. Now, I do recommend the bamboo ones if you're doing the flowers because then they're a little more flexible when you're putting into your vase. But to start off, I use a little, I don't know where I'm supposed to be because I can't see what you're seeing. But I start up these little beads that are quite small. Okay, thank you. And they actually start off like this. This is the whole one. And I take them and I put them into onto a file of sander. Larry, what is it that you were using that last time that helped me a lot to hold them? Oh, and perennial pliers that I stuck in the middle of it, and then we pushed it into it, and they didn't get away from me, and I wasn't getting my fingers into the sander. But when I do the flowers, I keep the one side small and the other side large, because that's how your bulb is to the flower, if that makes sense to you. And then when I do the ornaments, I do it for both sides. I make it very small and only make it like maybe a third of an inch or so, not a half inch. So what I'm going to do is show you how I get to this point. And I'm going to start off with this one because this is my little bead, and the beads you can get at Amazon. I looked under jewelry and found the wood beads. And it's best if you start them off, because I just pulled this off. If you start it off with putting this in first. And I had not done that before. But recently when I was looking at an easier way, because not all of your wood shavings have access to the middle. If you look at it, see the hole is so small. So it's helpful if you start off backwards on the first one and then slide your bead up to it, if that makes sense. And then I glue the bead on to where I want it. And I like to leave a little bit of edge up here. And then after I make the flower, I leave a little bit of this because it makes it look like part of the flower. And so then I glue it in. And I set it because I've already glued the bead onto the stem. And then I let that set. And I pick up another piece, and it's pretty easy to find another piece generally. Now, once in a while, I do cut off the end of this, so I don't have any residue like sticking out from the wood. And I will tell you, I did buy a wood, I'm sorry, a glue bowl that heats all the liquid into the bowl and you use it from there. And it was not helpful. You ended up with too much glue. It made the flour too heavy. But you can see that you can build your next flour into this, letting it sit. And if I keep this on medium, it lets it set sooner. And I can tell you these shavings right here, Larry just did for me recently, and they're still pliable. The longer the shavings are, the more they dry, and then they crumble when you're trying to glue it. And when I get to a certain point, there's a lot of times I set this down, and then I pick up the piece, I put the glue on it, like so. And then I pick it up and put it in here. And when you get all done, you're going to have spaces in here. And then that's when I take up other pieces of the wood and I kind of sort through them and find them. And sometimes I cut them in half to put, and I glue the end of it. Sometimes I shorten them because if you can imagine, when you go to put it in here now that it's already glued, I shorten it so it will go in there and still be the same level as the rest of both petals, is what I'm going to call it. And that's how I get my flowers. And I just build it out until it's a shape I want. And lots of times I use my whole hand to cup it round as I'm putting in the pieces so that you still get a fairly round shape. And that's how I do the flowers. And then when I'm doing someone can get these and pass them around, and that way you can see the different things. And I'm going to give you these two to go with that. You can see. Thank you. And this is what I do when I'm making the ornaments. I cut this off and I start on each side of it. And I build up the same as I do the flowers on both sides. And then I start filling into the middle. And that ends up giving you the round ball. And then I take a finial that Larry sometimes turns, once in a while I get time to turn that part. I cut this off because, you know, the finial has your hole in it. I'm going to call it on the one that sticks onto something. I cut this off to whatever size I need for the finial. And I slide it down on it. And then on the long end, the reason why you use the wood, once again, is to keep it straight. And I try to be very quick and do them both at the same time. And I take both of the finials and I shove them into the wood because they will bend slightly. And this is some wood that Rick had made for me. And I was able to make some very small ornaments for Christmas. And that seemed to be a bigger hit than the big flowers that I was doing. And the Christmas ornaments, if you were at the stocking supper, you saw the big ones. And I just started doing the little ones recently. So that's basically what I do to make these. It was a little trial and error, but now you guys have the shortcut. So I'm glad you all enjoyed the flowers and how unique they were.
Ginny, did you see this on YouTube or is this just something you came up with?
Oh, I just came up with it. So, stuff like that comes kind of easy. Sorry, but The what? Oh, good question. I spray them with actually lacquer because the lacquer stiffens up the wood better than the polyurethane we've discovered. Sometime after the lacquer, I might put a coat of polyurethane gloss on them and stuff like that, but I stay with the lacquer because it makes them stiffer. They don't want to crumble as easily. I have considered doing the alcohol stain on them, but all the requests have been to keep them natural so far. It doesn't mean it won't happen down the road. One of the things you have to keep in mind if you do alcohol stain, you have to let it completely dry before you can put the glue and stick them in there onto the stems. And like if I had been thinking when I started this one, I would have moved this up because I could have got 2 to 3 ornaments out of this piece of the stem. I'm going to call it the mini dowel actually, but that helps. And some of these you can get if you get those oil diffusers, you can also get things from the oil diffusers, but most of those are with bamboo. So that's helpful for someone that has some of those laying around. So, any other questions?
Have you tried steaming those if they're such high?
Well, we were talking about that earlier. What
Repeat the question, please.
Oh, to keep them from drying out, he said to steam them. But we were talking about that earlier. What I thought I would do is, you know, the clay pieces that you get to put in your brown sugar to keep your brown sugar from getting hard. Most women will know this. You soak them, you set it into your container where your brown sugar is in plastic, and you set that on top of it, put it in a silk container, your brown sugar doesn't get hard. I thought this might work really well if I'm steady, I'm out there steady, because those discs do dry out. And so it will only work for a little while. Kind of like using bread into your brown sugar to keep it from drying. So that was considerations of that. I thought about misting it, which John was saying. I was a little bit worried about if I seal them up too much, I don't want it to mold. You know, that's my consideration. I don't want to be breathing that, obviously. But,
When you your first place down, put it around your knee. Then you put your second layer on. How long do you wait for your glue to dry?
Repeat the question.
the question was, when I put the flour on the bead, and then I put the next layer on, how long do I let the glue dry? I actually don't put it onto the bead. I actually put it onto the stem and push it into the bead, so it's touching it. And I build from there, and I let the bead be the center, especially on the ornaments. I let the bead be the center of the, so I can build the middle. Because if I put the first ones onto the bead, then I have no room to work. I used up all my space. And to include the middle of it, and I like the stem to look, when you get done, I like to show this stem. And if you start putting it on the very beginning of it, you're already filling your stem.
Why don't you do a couple more layers on there?
Oh, I can do some more layers. But,
And then that way you'll have that.
and you notice on this one, I did it right on the top of it. And then I put this in. And it always takes some time if I have some brittle pieces, I might put a little glue on the edge. But I don't do that too often because you lose the effect. Then it starts looking clumpy and heavy. And that's not something I like. And if you touch it before the glue starts getting hard, you can actually get 2 or 3 of them on. And Um, it can either be hot or cold for the temperature on the heat gun.
Yeah.
Or medium actually. And this is actually Gorilla, and I have found the Gorilla was my favorite. I have another one at home. I don't like it near as well. And I like the Gorilla Glue because once it's on there, it's on there. I don't suggest you gluing your fingers when it's on hot because I've taken skin and everything with it.
Yeah.
So, and that was probably one I should have clipped the end off.
Are you opening each one of those and then wrapping it, or are you taking it as a round and inserting it?
I take it as a round and inserting it. And you'll notice this one I'm cutting short because I'm going down inside and in between pieces. And to get it the same roundness, let's say, as the other. That gives you an idea. This, you can tell, sometimes I get one that sticks way out. I have these little nifty scissors. I can trim it once it cools off. I try not to ever do that. And the reason why I try to do that is I like the natural edge look, and I don't really like this to have that straight edge on me. Does that give you an idea?
Yeah. Keep going.
Keep going.
I get to keep all demonstrations.
Need my paper.
And I will say the little tiny wire cutters work the best. I have two pair. My sister gave me a whole nother kit, and I'm very pleased. It was a great Christmas present from her. Anybody, I can put those little lines on those pieces and make them look like that. I would think this would not be an issue. And I will say the biggest problem is having the wood that doesn't crumble. I did one recently and I started the flower. I did finish it, but the rest of the whole tray went in the trash because it was, instead of 45 minutes to at the most an hour usually, I was 2.5 hours making one flower. And that was the end of that one. But, and I started these little ones like this, and I did this on purpose to show how these small ones. Now, if you can see my hands, and you see this wood, it is not in a coil. So I push it down, I glue it, and then I insert it in here. But when I do my first, back to the question that you were asking about when you start them off, I like to take and run a center of one of these into around the stem because it gives you a covered way to start. You're not leaving stem out.